Post-apocalypse.
A short story by PJ Leonard. Part 1. 99 perfect days in a row, Horace, said Mr. Banks. One more day to the golden envelope. Just doing my job, sir, said Horace, watching as Mr. Banks stamped his time card with another red checkmark. Oh, don't be so modest, man, Mr. Banks chortled, handing him his time card. You do realize nobody has ever won the golden envelope before, right? I mean, 1,000 days with no missed or late deliveries? It's unheard of. I think the next closest to you is Samantha, and that's something like 200 days. It's not even close. Horace smiled, feeling his ears burning. He'd heard a lot of people in the mail centre expressing their amazement at his postal skills over the past year. Some of it was nice. Some people, like Adam in accounting, thought he was just weird. But this was the first time he'd heard it from Mr. Banks himself. Mr. Banks leaned forward. He was a big man, his fat neck wobbling as he spoke. "What's your secret, Horace?" said Mr. Banks, lowering his voice as if they were discussing a conspiracy. "The last 3 years haven't been easy. Snowstorms, heat waves, traffic gridlocks, a zoo unleashing all of its most dangerous animals onto the streets that all seem to want to eat our postmen and women, and you haven't missed so much as a Christmas card. How do you do it?" Horace tipped his postman's hat. "It's simple, sir," he said, running his fingers over the silver postman's badge on his chest. "It's the postman's honour. The delivery is a promise. It must always get to where it needs to go, no matter where, no matter when, and always, always on time, whatever it takes." Mr. Banks chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, Horace, between you and me, I wish the rest of the staff would take their job half as seriously as you." Horace said nothing, but he privately agreed. "They all think being a postman is just a job," he mused. "But it's more than that. It's a way of life." Mr. Banks stood up straight, beaming. "There's a bright future ahead of you, Horace. Far more than just a golden envelope." Mr. Banks looked around, as if checking to make sure nobody else was in his office. "And this is strictly confidential, but I want you to know that the Board of Executives are watching you with great interest." Horace felt his chest swell with pride. "Really? Thank you, sir." Mr. Banks winked. "Just get through tomorrow. You'll see." Horace woke up especially early the next day. A good postman wakes up early anyway, but when his alarm clock rang, it was still dark outside. He showered, shaved, and dressed into his postman's uniform. He'd ironed it out the night before. "I will look my best today." He stepped out into the crisp and cold morning. He was just about to insert his key into his car when he stopped. That traffic report. It had said that the roads were clear, but then the weather report had mentioned the chance of drizzle. More people took their cars when it rained. What if traffic built up on the way to work? No, it wasn't worth the risk. He stuffed his car key into his pocket and hopped onto his bicycle. He took the slightly longer way to the mail centre, which weaved around the edge of the city but had a 25% less chance of a car accident than the quick route. "I'm taking no chances today." He pulled up his bicycle at the mail centre a whole 28 minutes earlier than he normally arrived, which in of itself was early anyway. "Morning, Angie," he said brightly to the receptionist. "You're looking as radiant as ever today." Angie peered over her huge mug of coffee, looking as though she'd just been dragged out of bed 2 minutes ago. "Horace," she drawled, "should have known you'd be here first. You are far too happy for this early hour." "Today's the day," Horace smiled. "I want to get started as early as possible." "Is it really that much of a big deal?" said Angie. "It's just the post." "The post is a promise," said Horace solemnly, "and I want to keep those promises no matter—" Yeah, Angie waved a hand. Wherever, whenever, blah, blah, blah. Heard it all before. Horace took a deep breath, forced a smile, and then walked away. No point arguing. Mr. Banks had already given him the stamp of approval, and anyway, today was his special day. Nobody was going to spoil it. He headed straight into the sorting room. It was a big, factory-sized room full of labelled baskets and shelves stacked high with envelopes and parcels. If only I could get all of these letters out to the people. He shook his head as he passed the mailbags that should have been finished yesterday. Some other postmen and women just don't take their work as seriously as they should. He reached his sorting station. It was nearly empty, the cubbyholes like honeycombs surrounding him, and what few letters that were there were neatly stacked and already sorted. Time deliveries for today, he reminded himself as he slid them carefully into his bag. Morning, Horace, a voice yelled. Horace wheeled around. Timothy, his line manager, was coming towards him, driving a small forklift truck carrying several lumpy sacks. Horace grinned and waved to Tim. Tim didn't think Horace was strange. Tim actually liked him. Probably because I make his work easier, Horace thought, nodding. Tim pulled up next to Horace's sorting station and climbed out of the forklift. I was paranoid that you were going to end up calling in sick, mate, said Tim, slapping Horace on the shoulder. You can rely on me, sir, said Horace. I sure can, Tim grinned. And for the last time, stop calling me sir. I don't like it. Yes, Tim, said Horace, feeling awkward as he said it. Tim threw his head back as he laughed and lifted a small sack of letters off of the forklift. Here's your lot for today, he said. Looks like you're working around the Lavender Hills area today. Nice area. Nothing exciting ever happens there. Nothing exciting sounds perfect to me, said Horace. Tim wished him good luck and drove away. Horace opened the stack and sorted the letters quickly into the cubbyholes. He knew exactly where each letter needed to be. He'd already memorized the map of the city and all of the postcodes. When the sack was empty, he scooped up the handfuls of envelopes and placed them into his mailbag. He'd sewn extra pockets inside to keep everything organized. He signed the necessary documents, ticked the necessary checkboxes, and picked up his heavy mailbag. This is it. Just need to get through this round. It was just starting to get busy in the sorting room now, and most of the other staff wished him luck as he headed out. Some didn't. Some were too busy yawning, drinking coffee, or just rolling their eyes at him. Horace shrugged. I'll be the one with the golden envelope in a few hours. Lavender Hills was a quiet suburb on the edge of the city, with winding streets, neatly trimmed hedges, and expensive cars parked in the driveways. One by one, Horace made his way through the gates, up the long lawns, and slipped the envelopes into the letterboxes. The birds were awake now, the sun peeking over the rooftops. The perfect morning. As Horace's bag grew slowly lighter, the excitement swelled inside him like a head of steam. Jumping back onto his bike to get to the next street, he daydreamed about what it would be like when he returned to the mail centre. Will he get an award? Maybe they'll have a party in his honour. As long as I don't have to make a speech. I don't like speeches. They never go as well as planned. He arrived at Quaintish Crescent at 8:13 a.m, a whole 17 minutes ahead of schedule. He parked his bike neatly at the edge of the street and took out the last batch of letters. They shook in his hand. Calm down now. It would be terrible to make a mistake now. He triple-checked every envelope against the house number before he posted. 3 left. 2. 1. Just as the final envelope slipped through the metal flap of number 43's door, his work phone buzzed. Frowning, he pulled it out of his pocket. It was a message from Tim. Special delivery. Please collect the bag drop from collection point 8 near Tabletop Road. Cheers, Tim. At first, Horace felt a flush of annoyance at Tim for ruining his big moment. The very moment I posted my last letter. But as he headed back towards his bike, Horace felt a little brighter. The more he thought about it, the more he liked the idea of a special delivery being his last post of his 1000th perfect day. In fact, the timing seemed to be just a little too perfect. A special delivery for him to handle? Maybe, just maybe, this was some kind of special surprise for him. If that's true, then I will definitely have to give a thank you speech. Better start thinking of something to say. He pulled up his bike at the corner of Tabletop Road. A metal lockbox was embedded in the nearby brick wall. Horace looked around. Were his colleagues in hiding, ready to jump out with streamers and poppers and a loud shout of "Surprise!" Maybe inside of the collection box was a cake. He reached into another pocket and pulled out a bunch of keys. He picked out the correct key straight away and, bracing himself, opened the box. Nothing happened. Inside the collection box was just a normal parcel. Horace's ears burned again, feeling a little bit silly. He'd gotten a little bit worked up there. Still, cake would have been nice. He picked up the parcel. It was a pretty normal parcel, about the size of a book, and wrapped in messy brown paper. It sure didn't look like a special delivery to Horace. He turned it over and looked at the address. 18 Campbell Lane, Ridgeworth, RW855A. Note, please deliver by 11 a.m, May 10th, 2845. Horace stared at the writing. The address was pretty normal, but that time delivery note, did that say 2845? As in the year 2845? Was this some kind of joke? Horace looked around, half expecting Ian or somebody else to be peeking around the corner, laughing at him. But no, this looked like a real delivery. He shrugged. It was probably a mistake, or the writer was trying to make some barbed comment on how the post was always late. Not if I have something to do with it. He locked the metal box back up, and parcel in his hand he headed back to his bike. Well, it is before the year 2845 now, so this will be the earliest delivery I ever made. How fitting. Someone screamed. He spun around. A lady was staring in terror out of a bedroom window, eyes wide and looking into the sky. Horace looked up and saw a flaming meteor the size of an island falling to earth. He heard more screams and the sounds of cars screeching and crashing into one another nearby, but Horace couldn't take his eyes off of the meteor. The sky flushed red and the ground underneath his feet began to shake. Well, this is, unfortunate. Looks like the world is about to end. No golden envelope, no more deliveries, no more Horace. He blinked and tore his sight away. No, it won't end this way. He looked wildly around. There was no way he could escape that meteor, even with his bike. He needed to find shelter, somewhere solid. His eyes fell on the metal collection box. Could he squeeze in there? Boom! A tiny meteorite had peeled off of the main meteor and struck a nearby house, exploding into flames, brick, and dust. With one last sorrowful look at his trusty bike and mailbag, he scrambled for the keys and threw the mailbox open. The ground shuddered as though it was being struck by giant drumsticks. He climbed inside the box. Hands slick with sweat as he stuffed himself into the box, he gave one final look around. Tabletop Road was already a mess, with people running around in nightgowns and car alarms wailing all around him. Maybe this is the last thing I'll ever see. The air turned hot and bright. He slammed the metal door shut and held his hands over his head. It was perfectly dark inside, and for a second Horace could only hear his own breathing. Then, something that felt as big and heavy as a truck slammed against the box. Horace smashed his head against the side, saw a flash of white light, and then everything went dark. End of part 1.